Hi y'all, welcome to my shop. Do you use an airbrush? I never have. Never really thought about it because I had a crappy, very noisy air compressor, a small one. And it looked like an expensive setup. I don't use a whole lot of color, but I did buy some, I did get some wood dye some years ago. I've had it for several years, Chromacraft, real nice, real good stuff. But I mostly use it for birdhouse ornament roofs, and I've used it on a couple of nativity scenes, and I just used it with rubbing on a rag. So anyway, I was up at the Louisville AAW Symposium, and I was looking at a wood artist's work, admiring it, and it was airbrushed, and the artist came up to me, and Ron Thomas, some of y'all may know Ron, and we got to talking. Next thing you know, he's marching me over to Joe Fleming's booth. I knew Joe, I'd met him before at previous shows, and he sells Grix. He's a airbrush artist, and he sells Grix products. So Ron said, as he's marching me over, says, "Yeah, you really need to get one of these things." And he's probably got a rebuilt one underneath the counter that'd save you a few bucks. And sure enough, he did. So he sold me this one. There's basically two different kinds of airbrushes. There's one that's got a trigger on top that starts the air, and he said this one was a little easier for beginners. It cost a few bucks more. I thought, well, I want something easy for beginners. So with this, you just pull the trigger, the air flows out, and then you pull it further back, and you get a spray. So I'm just starting my airbrushing journey. So I'm not going to be able to teach you a whole lot about airbrushing, but I'll just tell you a little bit of what I've learned so far. I have a very nice air compressor. I did a review of it a while back, a really quiet one, 10 gallons. And what I've discovered is I really don't need to get too many fancy add-ons right now. I didn't need to get a fancy regulator. It had a very nice regulator on it. It doesn't swing back and forth a lot because of that 10 gallons. You don't use a whole lot of air, and that works out. And one of the things I found out, probably the best way to practice is buying some acrylic paint. So I got some airbrush acrylic paint. Difference between airbrush acrylic paint and a regular artist acrylic paint is the pigment size is much smaller, so it'll easily go through the airbrush. The other thing I learned, like almost anything else in wood turning, is it takes a lot of practice before you can actually apply it. You don't want to take a brand new wood turning and apply a brand new finish on it you've never used before. So it takes several hours, and this is the kind of exercise that if you go on the internet, on YouTube, you'll see lots of people telling you how to get started with airbrushes, and this is what they're going to tell you. They're going to tell you to practice these 3 series of exercises. You're going to do dots. Closer you get, the smaller it is. They're going to tell you to use 2 hands. Just like wood turning, you don't just swing it around like this. You don't have control. Use your whole body. The other exercise is they're going to have you do lines. Then they're going to have you practice overspray. Those are the 3 basic exercises. Once you get those down, then you're ready to move on to actually applying it. Okay, besides the dots and the lines and the overshading, the other technique I'd forgotten to mention is the dagger stroke, and that's the one I'm still working on, and if you don't get it right, you got to keep practicing until you get it right. And that's where you start off real close with heavy dye, and then you fade out. Didn't do a good job on that. Quickly, and I'm getting too much overspray here, too much water. Or you start with an overspray, and then you quickly move in. That's called a dagger stroke. That's going to take a lot of practice. So airbrushing, similar to woodworking, takes practice. It takes hours of practice learning the basic technique before you ever apply it. I've almost reached the point where I can start doing something a little more complicated, but practice is the answer. And let me give you an example. I've been practicing these exercises over and over, and I'm almost to the point where I could actually move from doing a sketch pad, which I found in the basement we had for our granddaughters when they came over and played with art stuff, and they weren't doing that anymore. So I do both sides and then throw it away and do another one. I've been doing this every day for the past week or so. So after Ron takes me over to Joe and I get an airbrush. Then he marches me over to Bradley McAllister's booth, Spirocraft. Bradley's another wood artist that uses lots of color. He's from Georgia. Used to be from somewhere not too far from Atlanta, but he's moved south south of Georgia. So after he marches me over to Bradley McAllister's booth, he picks up this package of Chromacraft wood dye and says, "You got to buy one of these." And I said, "Yeah, but I've already got some of those. I've had it for years. Really good stuff. I like it." And he says, "Yeah, but you don't understand. They've got it on sale. The price is going to be going up. And this is a show price. You really need to go ahead and get this." It's like, okay. He said, "If you go away and think about it, you come back, they're going to be gone because there's only 2 left here on the shelf." So, okay. Thank you, Ron, for talking me into getting the wood dye. And then he says, for the finish, he says, "I use this clear acrylic lacquer from Chromacraft." Listen, I'm not trying to promote Chromacraft. I don't get anything out of it. This is what Ron used. He says, "I've used a lot of finishes, and this is the best. This is the best." I said, "Okay, ring it up, Bradley." Now, a funny story about Bradley. Last year, I was down in Savannah for a little mini family reunion, and we were coming back, and we stopped at this tiny little place on the side of I-16 called Metter, and at 7-Eleven to get some gas. And I see this guy, and I think, "Gosh, that looks like Bradley McAllister." I said, "Let's check it out." "Hey, Bradley," and he turns around and comes over. It's like, yeah, Bradley McAllister. You know, small world. Okay, the other accessory I bought, and I got this off Amazon, even cheaper than you can get it at Harbor Freight, and it's a little pot that you can empty your contents in. This is especially good if you're using some kind of solvent paint, because it's got a little filter here to capture some of the overspray. These are cheap. The other thing I discovered is you got to clean this brush every time you use it, and it's got a lot of parts. It's kind of intimidating, but when you walk through it a couple of times, it doesn't look like it's that hard. But it does take about 10 minutes to clean the brush at the end of the day. You guys know how much I love to teach, or I wouldn't be making these videos. So I do teach lessons in my shop. If you live in the Atlanta area, you got relatives in the Atlanta area, or you're just traveling through, check it out. Details on my webpage. All right, so this is the beginning of my journey. If you don't have an airbrush, maybe it's something for you to consider. If you have an airbrush and you're pretty good at it, leave some tips below for me, because I'm still learning. And remember, y'all stay safe. Come on back here.